Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, where we try to make sense of all the corporate jargon, and today we're diving into Akari Therapeutics' latest report, and let's just say they've been busy making some big moves. We're going to break down what this means for the company and its investors, so stick around. So Akari Therapeutics, or Akari Therapeutics as you might see it, is reporting on some really interesting financial deals that just wrapped up. Basically, they've managed to pull in around $9 million. Now, how did they do this? Well, it was a combination of selling more of their company stock and also sorting out some existing debt. Think of it like a company needing cash. So they decide to sell a bit more of itself to the public and also trade in some old IS for new ones or even for small pieces of ownership. Let's dig into the stock sales first. They had what is called a registered direct offering. That's a fancy term for selling shares directly to certain investors, usually in a big chunk. They sold over 10 million American depository shares, or ADSs. Now, an ADS is like a ticket to own a piece of a foreign company. So it is a way for investors here to easily trade shares of companies not listed on US exchanges. Each of these ADSs actually represents 2,000 of their regular shares. The price for these shares, along with some special warrants that give the holder the right to buy more shares later, was about 38.8 cents per S-share. On top of that, they also did a private placement which is more exclusive, selling shares and special warrants to certain of their own directors and officers. These deals also involved what they call pre-funded warrants. These are special kinds of options that let people buy shares at a super low price, basically almost free, about 1/100th of a cent per share. So, when you add up both the public offering and the private placement, they are expecting to raise about $5 million in cash. This money is mainly going towards their research and development, which is basically their efforts to discover and create new medicines or treatments, and also for general business operations. Now let's talk about these warrants. There are a few different types. First, the Series G warrants. These give the holders the right to buy shares of Akari stock at a set price later on. For the ones sold in the public offering, that price is 38.8 cents per ADS. The interesting part is they can't just exercise these warrants whenever they want. They need shareholder approval for it first. Also, there are limits on how many shares someone can own through these warrants to prevent any one person from having too much control. They have a duration of 5 years from the day shareholders approve. The pre-funded warrants are a bit different. They have an incredibly low exercise price, just a tiny fraction of a cent, and they don't expire. They're immediately exercisable once shareholders give the green light. Again, there are rules about how many shares one person can own with these too. The company is also committed to holding a shareholder meeting called a special meeting within 75 days to get that approval for issuing more shares when these warrants are used. If they don't get the approval the first time, they promise to keep trying every 40 days until they do, or until all the warrants are no longer valid. These agreements, like the ones for buying shares, also include standard clauses about promises made, responsibilities, and how to handle potential problems. All pretty typical for these kinds of financial deals. Akari also hired a company called Ladenburg Thalmann and Company Inc. to act as their placement agent. Think of them as the brokers or salespeople who help find buyers for the shares and warrants. For their work, Akari is paying them a fee, which is 8% of the money raised from the sale. That's a significant chunk. They're also getting their own special warrants called placement agent warrants to buy about 500,000 ADSs. These have a higher exercise price than some of the others, around 48.5 cents and a 5-year life. The shares being sold in the direct offering are being offered through something called a shelf registration statement. This is like having a pre-approved menu of offerings ready to go. This statement was already approved and effective earlier in the year, and this report is just adding the details of this specific sale. Now, let's switch gears to the other part of how they raised money dealing with their debt. This is pretty interesting. They had some old debts called 2026 notes, which were issued a bit earlier in the year and were set to mature in about a year. They managed to get holders of about $4 million worth of these notes to agree to exchange them. Instead of paying back these $4 million in cash, they gave the debt holders pre-funded warrants. These are the same kind of warrants we saw earlier, allowing them to buy a lot of Akari ADSs at a very low price. They also gave them another type of warrant called a note exchange warrant. So, they effectively traded just under $4 million in debt for the right to issue a lot more shares in the future. This reduces their immediate debt burden, but adds to the potential number of shares that could be outstanding. It is important to note that these warrants and the underlying shares are being sold through exemptions from the usual registration rules. This usually means they are sold to investors who are considered sophisticated, like institutions or wealthy individuals, who are believed to be able to understand the risks involved without all the usual disclosures required for public offerings. Because they exchanged all of those notes, the original debt agreements for those 2026 notes are now terminated. They essentially bought back and eliminated that specific debt. This section just confirms that they've sold these securities, the warrants and shares, without going through the full registration process, which we just touched upon. The company also put out a press release about all of this. They want to make sure everyone gets the same important information at the same time, which is what Regulation FD is all about. And finally, like most companies, they've included a section of forward-looking statements. This is essentially a disclaimer saying that while they expect certain things to happen, like closing these deals by a specific date, there's no guarantee because many things could prevent it. They are warning investors not to rely too heavily on these predictions because they can't promise they will come true. Now, looking at all of this, Akari Therapeutics is in a bit of a common situation for biotech companies. They need cash to fund their research, which is a long and expensive process. They've been successful in raising about $9 million combined through selling stock and restructuring debt. The immediate reduction of $4 million in debt is a positive step, as it lowers their immediate financial obligations. However, by issuing so many warrants, essentially giving people the right to buy shares at a low price in the future, they are creating potential future dilution. This means that when those warrants are exercised, a lot more shares could be out there, potentially lowering the value of each existing share if the company's overall value doesn't grow proportionally. The large fees paid to the placement agent, 8% of the gross proceeds, is also quite high and indicates they really needed skilled help to get these deals done. The need for shareholder approval to issue the underlying shares for the warrants is a key hurdle they must clear. If they don't get it, the whole structure of these deals could be compromised. And they might have to keep asking shareholders until they get it. This shows a degree of dependence on shareholder confidence. The company's strategy seems to be focused on advancing its research programs, and these financial maneuvers are designed to provide the runway for that. We need to watch if their research pipeline can deliver the goods to justify this future dilution and the high cost of capital. The significant increase in potential share count through warrants means that their future success needs to be substantial to make up for it on a per-share basis. Alright, that is our breakdown of Akari Therapeutics' latest filing. What do you think about their fundraising strategy? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this analysis helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into corporate finance. And don't forget to join our Discord community. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.